Hey there. Says that I'm live, so here I am living. All right, today I'm planning on reading uh, a short story that I wrote for the Fae Wars universe. This particular anthology is called Fae Wars: More Tales from the Occupation. There's a link in the description. And basically, I just wanted to introduce a character who's an elf who's also against the elves. And I thought that would be really interesting. And now I'm porting that character over and I'm using him in the Fae Wars novel that I'm writing for Canon Publishing. And so I was like, "Oh, I don't know how many people read this anthology. I don't know if anyone knows who Caliban is." So I'm going to do a live reading of The Ruin of Caliban so you guys can meet him. And that way, when Devil Rising comes out later this year, you guys will have some kind of idea who this is and what on earth I am referring to. So let me call it up. And I'll get started. I'm reading off of my screen, so if it looks like I'm looking right at you in the camera, then that's what I'm doing. The Ruin of Caliban by Jonathan Scherger. One second, let me make sure my mic is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing here, because you never know, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Output was wrong. Okay, let's try again. The Ruin of Caliban by Jonathan Scherger. I am called Albereth, though that is not my name. I serve as equerry of House Ravenna, banner bearer of the 8th Legion, and warrior of the Way. My tale is not as interesting, though later you may find it so. Today, I lay quill and ink to page to create record of the demon. He was not known as such when he arrived on this little jewel in the void they call Terra. By many epithets and slurs was he recognized amongst his elven brethren, thanks to his family's cataclysmic fall into shame. But he is now so known, and as the skull piles grow, I wonder if, in the infinite lines of fate, he might have been just another spoiled princeling jockeying for favor with his fellows, had they but accepted him. No, I suppose not. Captain Severian Caliban has always had the cold edge of steel in his gaze. When he looks upon you, you can feel his mind piercing through you like a spear tip, revealing your secrets to him. He was never one for the silly games of court intrigue played by bored elites. He had power to amass and enemies to slay, and not these pathetic mortals that claim ownership of Terra. The lives of orcs and humans he spends as currency to advance his own position. His rivals vanish or retire, unwilling to fall beneath the dread gaze of Caliban the Black, demon of the 8th. The end of the world lies in those eyes. I've always said so. The arrival was ordinary, as such things went. The portal in Briarthrone Keep cast its light throughout the stone chamber, washing the marble stones with flickering beams of luminance. The other equerries gasped, always impressed with the dramatic show of radiance. I did not. It was another turn of duty for me, another elven noble to serve, another ego to massage and feed, until the humans somehow slew this one too. I had lost 3 thus far. 3 arrogant lordlings striding down the stairs with cocky smirks, as if they owned the portal and all of Terra already. I had laid all their house gems at the feet of their shocked parents, and seen to the disposition of their effects. No one respected Earth as they should, and on this merciless battlefield, the unwary died swiftly. Which is why today, a pale houseless surprised me. A group of 5 elves, minor princes of very thin royal blood, strode down the steps, chattering and laughing animatedly to one another. They were beginning their grand adventure, their voyage to glory and renown. None had expected the chance to be here. The glory of the Terran invasion was to go to the highest and most noble of the elves. They did not know how many casualties we had suffered to allow their graceless entrance. Only one remained at the threshold of swirling energies, sharp and black against the backdrop. I watched curiously as this elf lowered himself to his knees on the marble floor and pressed a hand to it, his fine white hair falling like a curtain across his shoulders. His weapon, a glaive of fine make, he laid on the cold stones, its face shimmering with reflected light. I was so shocked by the unprecedented behavior, I missed all but the last of his words, spoken low. A whisper of a promise to himself, stolen by an equerry's lip reading skills. Walk not in the footprints of others, my son. Carve the road. He rose to his feet, taking up his weapon to tuck behind him, and those cold eyes knifed into me like chips of ice as I passed the chattering lordlings. I knew this was my new lord, the one for whom I had waited for many years. I held a scroll with his details on it, but I did not unfurl the parchment. I knew all I required. Lord Sevarian Caliban, I presume. He inclined his head slightly toward me. Yes, he asked quietly, his tone considered and refined, yet with the promise of violence behind it. I bowed shortly. I am Lieutenant Albereth of the Eighth. I have been assigned to serve as your equerry. Excellent, he said, glancing about. The other new arrivals swept out of the portal chamber, already babbling about glories to be won as their servants chased after them. Lord, there is an informal gathering for the new officers in the mess, and... Captain. I stuttered to a stop. Apologies, my lord? Caliban did not look at me, taking in the chamber, cataloging it as he spoke. My rank is Captain, Lieutenant. Use it. I realized my mouth hung open an instant and snapped it shut. Yes, Captain. And this informal gathering, is it a tactical briefing? I shook my head slowly. No, Captain. It is a chance to welcome new arrivals and make introductions. His lip curled and he sighed. I had hoped, fool that I am, he said, that elves in an active war zone might conduct themselves differently. I had no idea how to respond to this, so I said nothing. Captain Caliban marched forward. Rather, he uncoiled, his movements lithe and predatory. I have command of a company, he asked, his boots clicking against the marble. Yes, Captain, I said, adapting to his preferred means of address. Second company, Ghidoran tribe. Are they black orcs? Sergeant Ulktar is, Captain, but the rest have yet to darken. He said. Take me to meet them. Now? I asked. But Lord Commander Varian ordered. Caliban stopped so abruptly I almost ran into the back of him. I sidestepped quickly, narrowly avoiding the very sharp blade of his glaive tucked behind his shoulder. He did not turn to face me, but lifted his chin. Hear me now, Lieutenant Albereth of the 8th Legion. I have not passed through the portal to this barbaric world to lick some pissant's boots immediately upon arrival. Nor have I come to drown my cowardice in cheap wine while hiding amidst the laughter of equally cowardly fellows. He turned to me, and his sapphire eyes fairly burned with intensity. I have come to conquer, to tear glory from the Terrans' corpses, and I will suffer no delay nor countenance any hesitation in that pursuit. Have I made myself clear, Lieutenant? I nodded shortly. Inescapably, Captain. Now, take me to my command. The interior of an orc barracks is a rank assault on elven sensibilities. We have refined senses of smell and hearing as compared to the other races, which is why our art and music are so much more subtle. Orcs, on the other hand, loud pulsating booms blared from a stereo system, accompanied by some kind of screaming lyrics. Warriors in various hues of green lounged in the barracks or fought one another amidst cheering circles. Testosterone clotted the air, so thick I could chew it. Elves never entered the barracks, and to do so would be seen as an invasion of the tribe's privacy. Therefore, I hesitated at the threshold. Captain Caliban did not. He swept the cloak to the Gadoran tribe's barracks aside and strode within. I swore to myself and trotted after him. This was going to be interesting. Caliban walked several steps within and stopped, again considering his environs with that intense focus. Learning, I realized. One orc, a female in a black sleeveless top and pale green skin, glanced over at us. Her eyes widened, and she smacked the orc next to her on the arm. The orc snapped a glare at her, but she straightened and bellowed, "Good day to you, my lord!" The orcs within froze and turned to us. Someone flicked off that atrocious, blaring music, and my aching temples thanked the dead gods for small mercies. Caliban took a single step forward, his arms loose beneath his black cape. He did not cross them. He did not square up before the tribe to appear larger with his hands on his hips, as so many officers before him had done. "Which of you," he asked, "is Sergeant Ulktar?" A giant black-skinned orc stepped forward. I knew him well. He had also lived through 3 previous commanders. An orc's skin darkens as it ages, but also as it battles. The hormones within its system tints the pigment of its skin as battle rage flows through its veins. You could tell how deadly an orc was by how dark his skin was. And Ulktar was black as coal. "My lord," the orc rumbled. Caliban waved a hand dismissively. "Captain," he corrected. Ulktar snuffed, standing awkwardly. He did not know what to do. That was all right. I did not know either. Captain Caliban knew exactly what he wanted, however. "I am Captain Caliban of the 8th Legion," he announced to the room. He did not raise his voice, yet every orc in the barrack stayed locked onto him. "I come to spill the red blood of the humans and stack their skulls." Orcs grunted in surprise. Elf lords did not speak this way. Ah, my mouse decided to freak out. "I Sergeant Ulktar." He pointed at Ulktar. "I read they punished you for his failure. The lashes have healed well." Ulktar shrugged, but his eyes burned at the memory of his humiliation. Caliban looked around. "I come to conquer," he said, repeating the words he'd told me. "You are my weapons. We have not chosen one another, yet now our fate lies woven as one cord." He pointed at Ulktar, then tracked the finger across the room. "I know you are strong. You are Ghidoran. Your kill marks outnumber the stars in the sky." More approving grunts. The testosterone in the air spiked. Caliban patted his chest. "You deserve to be commanded by one worthy. I come to be tested of you." The room fell silent. Ulktar stepped forward. "Captain," he rumbled, "orcs not hurt elves. We get punished." "Lieutenant Albereth," Caliban said. I snapped to attention, uncomfortable at being singled out amid beings I normally only shared a battlefield with. "Captain, make record that should Sergeant Ulktar draw my blood in single combat, the grog rations for the Ghidoran tribe shall be tripled for the evening." Intakes of breath. Orcs glanced at one another, their eyes widening in anticipation. "Should he kill me," Caliban said, not taking his eyes from Ulktar's, "he may claim my father's glaive as his own inheritance for all time." Even I jerked at that. An orc, bearing not just an elven weapon but an heirloom? It was unprecedented. It was inappropriate. It was done. Oktar said with a wide grin. Here? Caliban nodded. Then somehow, he shocked me again. Around orcs, elves do not remove their armor. The lesser races resent us, and often seek to plunge a dagger into our backs when the opportunity presents itself. We have not become the masters of the universe by embracing foolish habits. Therefore, when Caliban unfastened the shoulder clasps of his breastplate, I did not move to take it. He removed the entire piece of armor and turned to me, one eyebrow raised. Vocalized commands should not be required for this, I think, he said, and I lurched from my stupor to take the armor. Piece by piece, Savarian Caliban stripped down to his black breeches, bare feet, and bare chest, while the skin of his torso was porcelain, perfect as a young god's and lean with muscle. The scars behind stole my breath. A vicious crosshatch of lines, the edges knotted with thick calluses, etched across his back, and the orcs fell deadly silent at the sight. I knew the work of an Arthur whip. I had seen the punishment administered rarely, for few elves had the stomach to watch the victim eject their intestines through their mouths. The whip itself was tipped with the spines of great centipedes, and the toxins induced savage hallucinations before they stopped your heart. It was a cruelty reserved for the basest traitors of the lower races, and they rightfully dreaded this fate. To my knowledge, no elf had ever suffered its poisoned lash. No being had ever even survived it. Yet here Caliban stood, hands loose at his sides as his hair hung down the sides of his face, his cold eyes boring into Ulktar's, who stood solemnly, looking down at this strange new officer. The orcs looked to their sergeant now, uncertainty in their eyes, but the chieftain did not move. The elf chucked his chin once, and Ulktar nodded in a show of respect before attacking. There are few things more terrifying than a black orc whose blood is up. The roar shook the barracks room. My heart rate accelerated, and had to repress an instinctive rush of fear. Elves were never on the receiving end of a war chief's charge. This was all new to me. Ulktar crossed the few yards between him and his prey in a blur. His massive knuckles, pitted and warped by decades of hand-to-hand combat, rocketed toward the captain's head. He did not pull the punch, and Caliban did not move. The strike nearly pitched Caliban off his feet. With a surprising grace, Caliban rocked with the blow and flipped over, bleeding off the thunderous power of the blow. The captain reeled a couple of steps before righting himself. He put a hand to his lip and looked at it, grunting at the red painting his fingertips. He glanced at me, and the entire room held its breath. Lieutenant, he said, see that they get their grog. He did not wait for my stuttered response. Instead, he lunged forward, transforming from cold elf into feral wolf in a heartbeat. Oktar tried to crouch down, but Caliban swung a clawed hand at his eyes. As the orc instinctively blocked the blow, the elf kicked out his front-facing leg and crunched a knee into his gut. Without hesitation, Caliban sprang up in a short hop and slammed his other knee into Oktar's jaw, pitching the war chief's head backward. Caliban twisted in mid-air and delivered a perfect kick, striking like a snake. Ulktar staggered back a step, driving his weight into the floor to regain his balance. It was already too late. Caliban leapt on him full on, teeth bared like a goblin. For a horrific instant, I thought he might emulate the vampiric princes of legend and bury his fangs in the orc's neck. But Caliban instead slammed the great orc into the floor. His fingers clamped around the chieftain's throat, and I saw black blood sprout from around his fingertips as he penetrated the skin. Ulktar froze, his hands raised to try to stop Caliban, but he let his heavy limbs flop to rest on the floor. Every being in the room heard Caliban's hissed words. I am your captain. You are my weapon. I hold your life in my hand, and even when I release your throat, it will remain so. Strike my enemies with the same force you struck me, and I will suffer no hand upon your tribe, be it elf or no. Swear to me now, Ulktar, chief of Ghidorah. The black orc slammed a fist into the floorboards. I swear, my captain, he rumbled. Like a cobra, Caliban withdrew his hand from Oktar's neck, and I saw the lines of blood dribbling down the orc's neck. The elf glanced at his hand, and without further thought, dragged the bloody fingers down his face, striping his visage with Oktar's black blood. A savage grin split Oktar's features, and he punched a fist into the sky. "Glory to the Eighth!" he roared. "Glory to Captain Caliban! Caliban, the Black!" The room erupted with bellows. Caliban did not turn to the healers for the blow to his skull, as I recommended, nor did he make his way to his quarters, where the meal I had ordered even now cooled and congealed upon the table. No, the young captain barely waited long enough to replace his clothing and armor upon his person. Now he stalked through the interior of Briar Throne Keep, his robes swishing behind him. "Captain," I asked, lengthening my strides to keep pace, "what, then, is your destination?" "Tactical," he said, and turned down the corridor to his left. "I wish to see the current state of the battlefield. The last report I read was a month old." My eyebrows raised as he turned another corner, perfectly guiding himself to a room he had never visited. "You know your way well," I observed. Caliban grunted. "This structure," he dragged his hand along the wall for emphasis, "was built according to standard specifications. Though superbly gifted in fortification, the dwarves are not known for their imagination. What works in one location works well in another. I studied their blueprints in depth to prepare for my eventual assignment." I cocked my head at that. "Eventual, Captain. Even as a houseless, you expected assignment." He chuckled. "Do you always remind your lords of their piss-poor social standing? Seems unwise." I ducked my head. "Of course, apologies, my lord." He raised a hand to forestall me, but did not stop walking. "Your question is good and worthy of answer. Yes, I am aware of my status as a houseless prince. I assume you did your reading on your own assignment to me." I nodded once. "Of course, Captain." "Then you know the circumstances of my house's fall from grace." Again, I nodded. The subject itself was too sensitive to speak aloud with so many passing through the halls. Caliban did not seem to care. My father retained lofty ambitions for his house, and my mother stoked those flames no end. Denied initial entrance into the Terran invasion, denied glory due him as a house patriarch. He sought power through other, more prescribed avenues. "Summoning," I said. He glanced at me, his eyes glinting like sapphires as they considered. "Yes, my mother discovered a record, buried in the crater that remains of Zadok's folly. Within it were the process and incantations to summon and bind a demon of the outer void to a house's service. It was a lengthy ritual, requiring many days and much sacrifice. My father sent me away then, for if the ritual should fail, an heir should survive of his house." Caliban did not break the edict on his lips and speak the forbidden name of his disgraced house. "I am told the ritual failed. Seconds from success, the Tower Council struck, and their mages incinerated everything and everyone in the chamber, including my parents. The secret police sought me out soon after. As you can see," he patted his back, where the scars of the Arthur whip were now hidden, "I was tested to see what I knew of my parents' actions." I inclined my head. "And you passed." Caliban chuckled darkly. "I passed. For this reason, I hold little in common with other elves of similar rank. I am the heir of disgrace, a prince of the ruined. My heritage is that of abomination and witchcraft." He gestured around him. Then the call was made for more warriors, and I saw my chance to wash away the stain of others' sins in the blood of conquest. I nodded, suddenly understanding. "Hence, we go to tactical, rather than the social gathering for the new lords." He smiled and walked on. "Hence, we go to tactical. You are not where you should be. The words dropped with contempt from the mouth of Lord Commander Varian Echthelad, Master of Briarthrone. The elven lord, his golden hair falling down his armor, lounged on his throne, swirling scarlet wine in a crystal goblet. He took a sip of the liquid and leaned back, his jade eyes bored as he took in Caliban and myself. Caliban inclined his head. Lord Commander, he said, I came to acquaint myself with the tactical situation. Varian's lip curled for an instant, then his features returned to their placid serenity. How we have fallen, he murmured, that we must entertain even the houseless among our ranks. I would ask why you are not with your betters at the welcome ceremony, but I see you realize no one wants you there either. I glanced at my captain, but no anger rippled across his face. He said nothing, waiting. At last, Varian waved his hand. As you please, Captain. He said the last word with a raised eyebrow, as if he could not believe he had to say it. Caliban saluted, fist to chest, and moved into the tactical circle. Runes lit around him, and a map of the area projected before him. With practiced hands, Caliban tapped floating sigils and began to tailor his tactical readout. Briarthrone Keep was an outpost in what the humans called the Sonoran Desert, in the south of what was the state of Arizona in the United States. After the Legion's invasion, it was decided that the highway system would be preserved to facilitate transport of supplies from the portals in San Diego and Los Angeles to eastern Texas and the southeastern ports. Briarthrone held 3 battalions of orcs and Varian's household guard to keep the 10th Way open and free of raiders. I stepped to the captain's side as his cold eyes searched through recent reports. This image is recent, he murmured to me, keeping his voice low. I shrugged. We have a scrying mage in Briarthrone who says he updates the map regularly, but he is most often drunk in his chambers. As he says, the desert never changes. Caliban sighed, a quiet hiss of frustration. Understood, he said. He cupped an area of the projected map with his hands and drew them apart, expanding that sector. Aho Pass, he said. This is where the raiders usually strike. I nodded. They call themselves Rodney's Raiders, Captain. Leftovers of the American military, commanded by a human they call Colonel Rodney Callahan. He is cunning, this human, striking swiftly like a falcon and vanishing into the desert. And we have no thought where his base might be, Caliban stated flatly. Still. That is correct, Captain, I said. He glanced at me. How has this intolerable situation been allowed to persist? I shrugged. Lord Commander Varian believes the matter shall resolve itself. In his words, no human can hope to match the perfection of the elves. A small sigh escaped Caliban. And so he does not engage, lest this Callahan prove otherwise. I nodded slowly, unsure of how much to say. The Lord Commander is of low station, Captain, and considers himself slighted by this assignment. He thinks it beneath him. Caliban said. And high command. Frustrated. Many resources have been lost to the raiders, and they strangle this route of supply. Caliban's eyes grew shadowed as he considered the display, and I saw him sink into his thoughts. Houseless. At Varian's voice, we turned. Yes, Lord Commander, Caliban asked, rising from his contemplative state. The elf lord leaned forward, a trifle unsteadily. I kept a schooled expression of neutrality on my face. There was little to do in this wasteland of brown, and most elves passed the time in intolerable heat in their cups. You wish to see our tactical situation. Caliban considered the question for a breath, then answered. If I may. Varian stood to his feet. Come then. A shipment of dwarven weapons passes on the 10th Way. and command has decreed that I am to escort them personally. You and your company shall join me." He glanced down at the floor, his lip wrinkling as he beheld himself. "This is not home," he said. "This is Earth, where even the basest born may prove himself worthy of glory. See how true elves conduct themselves in war, and perhaps even you can be elevated above your trivial station." Caliban nodded. "It would be my honor." "Oh, save it," Varian muttered, stepping down from his throne and sweeping past us. The reek of wine blasted our nostrils. "You command the rear guard, where you belong. Eat dust and watch highborn cover themselves in glory." "As you say," Caliban said, his eyes glittering. "Lord Commander." I had traveled much of the territory known as the United States in my time on Earth. In many regions, the coming of autumn heralded a drop in temperature, where the chill of the wind grew crisp as winter neared. The colors of the trees changed, the leaves fading from uniform green to yellows and reds before falling to the earth in a carpet of whispering foliage. Not so in this dismal dung heap called Arizona. In the privacy of my helm, I sighed. The autumnal equinox had already passed, well on the way to winter, and yet the heat still baked us in our armor. Unending brown stretched out before us, with no water or change of color in sight. Caliban and I sat astride worm steeds. For every dragon that reached full maturity, a dozen more grew no further. Some became worms, little better than guard dogs of the encampments. Our steeds were not even that. These creatures barely grew at all after hatching, practically non intelligent, and they were given to the least of the elves. Us. I sighed again. I don't know if you know what the heat does to the smell of orc. It intensifies it as their sweat glands overproduce to cool their massive frames. The wind, when it blew, blasted the noxious reek into my nostrils, and it dizzied me. "A weapon in its own right," I muttered, and Captain Caliban's helm twitched toward me. "Something to offer, Lieutenant?" he asked, a touch of a smile in his voice. "No, Captain," I said, fighting the urge to wipe the offending stench from my nostrils. "Our patience shall soon be rewarded," Caliban said. I grunted. "I have little confidence in that, sir. First, the Lord Commander assigns you this demeaning position, then orders you to take an inventory of and load the convoy as if you were a mere scribe or laborer. It is insulting and meant as such." Caliban shrugged and took a swig of water from a skin at his hip. He was the only elf lord I had yet seen who did not drink wine. We do what we can with what we have, Albereth," he said, "and that I have done." I squinted at that and faced him, but he leaned forward, suddenly focused. "Sergeant," he said, his voice intense, and Ulktar strode forward. The black orc seemed no worse the wear for the loss suffered at Caliban's hand, and in fact, the experience seemed to have solidified his trust in his new captain. "Make ready the tribe," Caliban hissed. "The enemy approaches." I searched the desert. Before us, the convoy toiled away on the great highway the humans called the 10th Way. 8 great hover sleds passed over the baked asphalt, escorted by Lord Varian atop his drake, and surrounded by the elves of his household guard. Lord Varian appeared bored, and he had compelled one of his retainers to hold a shade over him to protect him from the worst of the heat. His mount basked in it. "I see nothing out of place, my captain," I said. "And is therefore," Caliban said, "the perfect time to strike." He glanced at me and Ulktar. "Do nothing until I command. Respond." Both the orc and I exchanged glances, but we answered, "Yes, Captain." "Good." The pale elf turned back to the convoy below. "Let us see what we see, then." Drink some water. Water good. I don't know why I decided to lose my place. The first strike, when it came, shocked me. One moment, the hover sleds hummed along the road, with bored elves and orcs trudging alongside. The next, missiles rose from the desert on tall plumes of smoke and slammed into the convoy. Dwarven steel shredded into storms of deadly splinters as armor piercing warheads punched through the first and last hover sleds to blow them into raging infernos. Orcs bellowed in pain and rage, staggering from the blasts and clutching wounds inflicted by the shrapnel. There, Caliban said, and I saw what he did. Dust rose in a trail from behind a ridgeline, and I saw American armored vehicles burst from cover. Heavy machine guns, primitive in design but no less deadly, pivoted on their swivel mounts and opened fire. Lines of tracer fire stitched through the ground around the convoy, and I saw orcs and elves torn to bloody pieces and sprays of gore. Now they concentrate, Caliban said, and I saw his eyes had unfocused, as if he listened to music rather than witnessed a battle. Oktar grunted. Look! The lines of tracer fire converged on Lord Varian's Drake. Sparks sprayed from the creature's thick armor, and the beast roared in anger. Varian hauled on its reins and dug his heels in. Predictable, Caliban said, as the elf lord soared above the battlefield. The Drake became a dot in the sky, then banked for its return. At this point, the slaughter usually began. Tell me, Sergeant, the captain said, how does one slay a dragon? The orc shrugged. Don't know, he said. Never killed one. Caliban glanced at him. Dragons are supremely dangerous upon the ground within its cave. He gestured back at the battlefield. So, you must flush it out and blow it out of the sky. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant. Then more contrails of smoke blasted from the ground. 2 missiles, then 2 more, leapt into the sky, arrowing for the Drake. The creature did not see the ordnance incoming, caught up in the thrill of its first dive. 4 more missiles launched, again in 2 pairs, just as the first pair hit. Varian suddenly twisted in his saddle, his helm's proximity runes no doubt warning him of the threat. He hauled on the Drake's reins, and the beast rolled to the side just as the first missiles dove in. Its wings swatted the 2 warheads to spiral away into the air, where they exploded. The twin blasts threw Varian forward in his saddle, no doubt dazing the elf. The next 2 lanced in, and the Drake spun in midair, presenting its armored belly to the missiles to protect its master. The missiles punched into its armor, and the Drake screamed as fire consumed it. It lost altitude, its smoking wings struggling to keep it airborne. 4 more missiles arced toward the Drake. Varian yanked on its reins, and the beast twisted toward the weapons. Fire sprayed from its mouth as Varian cast an illusion spell of his Drake. A second appeared in the sky, launching itself away from the elf commander and his mount. The first missile lost its tracking in the fiery stream and tried to follow the illusion, exploding in empty air. The second exploded within the torrent of dragon's breath, and the shockwave was enough to break Varian's concentration, shattering his illusion. The third and fourth missiles roared in, and in desperation, Varian forced his mount into a deep dive. My mouth fell open at the tactic, because Varian was not far enough above the ground to pull up. The third missile streaked over Varian's head, missing the Drake's core by mere yards. It impacted in the desert and blew a spray of sand and rock fragments into the air with a boom that shook my chest. The last buried itself in the Drake's weakened flank armor, broke through, and detonated. The explosion blew its hind leg and wing off of its body and launched it into a death spiral, throwing Varian free. At the last moment, before the Drake's body slammed into the desert and the furnace in its core exploded, I saw the flash of a shield spell activate around Varian, the magic laid into his armor activating to save his life. All around the convoy, humans in camouflage fatigue sprang from holes dug into the sand, rifles barking non-stop. Orcs and elves pitched into the dirt, blood spurting from their chests and mouths. and I saw the first weapons thrown to the sand. In the distance, I saw raiders with weapons raised surrounding Lord Commander Varian, who tried to struggle to his feet. A soldier slammed the butt of his rifle into the elf's helm and knocked the Lord Commander flat. Captain, I asked, do we engage? Caliban remained motionless in his saddle, watching the massacre below with unblinking focus. No, Lieutenant, he said in a dangerously low voice. We do not. For an hour, we watched as the humans rounded up the battlefield. They looted the bodies of fallen warriors, taking weapons, ammo, and trophies. They loaded the cases of dwarven weapons onto their trucks, ready to take them back into their mountain fastnesses. Despite the rampant spoiling of our dead, Savarian Caliban did nothing. Oktar and I shared concerned glances. No longer were we elf and orc, separated by station and rank. Now we were both subordinates observing a disaster that would see us all punished. An elven lord commander, a shipment of elven weaponry in the hands of humans, and a marked lack of response upon our part. There would be no forgiveness for this. Caliban did not so much as send a message to high command. He straddled his worm steed, eyes unwavering through the slits of his helm. At last, he spoke. Sergeant. Oktar stepped forward. Captain, the scarred orc answered. See that the company is prepared to strike when the throat is bared. Oktar looked to me before answering. Aye, Captain. Oktar. The orc looked at his master. Captain. Caliban looked down upon him coldly. Mercy is the weapon of the weak. Wield none. Oktar slammed a fist into his chest. Aye, Captain. Caliban turned to me. With me, Lieutenant, and tie this to your spear. He pulled something out of a saddlebag and handed it to me. It was a long strip of white linen, its tail blowing in the wind. It appeared to be one of his bed sheets. I blinked and looked from it to him. My lord, I said, forgetting myself. He clucked his tongue and his mount moved forward. Know the ways of your enemy, Lieutenant. Come, we go to bear the throat. 2 more elves, 2 more trophies to take, rode out in full view of the enemy with naught but a strip of white cloth fluttering overhead. Yet Caliban swerved to neither the left nor the right. Rifles trained upon us, but did not fire. Heavy machine guns, capable of shredding even our armor, tracked our path, but remained silent. Humans in desert-pattern fatigue surrounded us, their eyes narrowed and cold. One lifted a hand. Hold up there, elf. What do you want with that flag of truce? Y'all never used that before. Caliban did not look down at him, but kept his eyes focused on the main trucks, where a human male with gray in his severely cropped hair stared at us. Tell Colonel Callahan that I have come for the life of Lord Commander Varian Echthelad of the 8th Legion. The man glanced at his compatriots, then hooked his thumbs in his webbed vest. And what if we don't have no Lord Commander Varian Egg Salad of the 8th Legion? His men chuckled. To my surprise, I saw a smile touch Caliban's lips as well. You do, Staff Sergeant. The man's head twitched, surprised at Caliban's identification of the rank insignia on his chest. As a matter of fact, I will wager a substantial sum that he has divulged his full name, rank, and overestimated value to you many, many times. The staff sergeant grinned ruefully. Well, seems like you do know him. Let me take you over to Colonel Rodney. He waved his arm, and a path opened through the raiders. Caliban slid from his worm steed, and I did the same. And your weapons too, elf. Caliban nodded shortly, and I slid my sheathed sword from my back and hung it over my saddle horn. Caliban left his glaive where it lay, hooked to his saddle. Lead on, Staff Sergeant. Colonel Rodney Callahan had a forceful presence up close. I stared as we approached. This small man, clad in the same fatigues as his men with no medals, honors, or banners, had humiliated the 8th Legion at Briarthrone for months. Nearby, the Lord Commander kneeled with his back to one of their trucks, his hands zip-tied behind him and a black canvas bag over his head. So, Callahan said as the captain came to a halt a few yards away, who might you be? Caliban stood with his hands loose at his sides. His carriage bore no arrogance, none of the spiteful superiority an elf might normally display in the presence of humans. He kept his helm in place. Again, an oddity. Most commanders I knew bared their heads, that their enemies might behold their faces and recognize their foe. I am nothing but a servant of the 8th Legion, Caliban said quietly. Rodney said, grimacing as he scratched the stubble on his neck. That's different. This one hasn't stopped telling me all about himself, so I won't kill him. Finally put a gag on him. He gestured at our escort. Sergeant tells me you're here to negotiate for him. Some kind of ransom? Caliban's helm tilted to the side. That is not what I said. One of Rodney's salt and pepper eyebrows arched. That's so. Well, go check him out anyway. We haven't heard him since shooting him down, despite my inclination to the contrary. Then we'll talk terms. Caliban inclined his head. My thanks, Colonel. Rodney squinted at him. You're the first elf to use my rank. Ever. Most of the time I get some high and mighty insults. Something different about you. Caliban ignored him and stepped toward Varian. When he slid the bag off the elf's head, Varian's green eyes blazed up at him, and a stream of muffled curses and orders poured into the gag in his mouth. Varian launched himself to his feet, shouting incomprehensible gibberish. Caliban waited patiently for the tirade to cease, and once Varian fell silent, his face red and his eyes wide with fury, Caliban put his hands on the elf's shoulders. The price of failure, Varian Echthalad, Caliban said quietly. Paid in full. Before I could even blink, Caliban rammed the spear hand into Varian's throat. The elf's eyes bulged in shock, and choking sounds emitted muffled from his gag. Caliban swept the Lord Commander from his feet with a sudden kick to the shins, and Varian fell on his face to the earth. Caliban finished him with a brutal stomp on the back of his neck, and I winced at the audible crack of the elf's spine splintering beneath Caliban's boot. The surrounding humans shouted and drew their weapons at the sudden violence, but Rodney held up his hands. Wait! He bellowed. Hold your fire! Caliban twisted from Varian's corpse and stalked back, his gait now the rolling slink of a great cat. Rodney stood with his hands on his hips, his face hard. That, the man spat, pointing at Varian's body, was a valuable prisoner. I'll let you check him in good faith. I can see that I will not be making that mistake again. And I said, Caliban hissed, that I came for his life. Do not blame me for your man's error in reporting. Rodney's eyes did not blink. What was that? He asked quietly, his voice intense. You came here under flag of truce just to kill your own man? Caliban stood tall, even surrounded by dozens of angry humans with weapons trained on him. Varian Echthalad humiliated his command, his legion, and his species for the last time today. I came to deliver sentence and execute justice upon him. Rodney considered him, tapping his knuckles on his body armor. You are different, he said finally. Haven't met one like you. How long you been on Earth? Where'd they transfer you from? Caliban gave the smallest of shrugs. First day. Rodney barked a short laugh. Is that so? Well, your kind might have benefited from someone like you, but sadly, this is also going to be your last day. Staff Sergeant! Rifles came up, aiming at Captain Caliban. He did not shrink from the dozens of weapons trained on him. I had not finished speaking, Colonel, he breathed. Rodney grinned. Well, by all means, finish what you were saying, kid. This, Caliban said, indicating the ruins of the convoy, was not your ambush. It was mine. Rodney glanced around, hands on his hips. Well, you did a bang up job. I got a dead Lord Commander and some high quality weapons out of it. That I, Caliban said, placing his hand on his chest. Packed. Rodney blinked. What? What does that mean? Something lit up under Caliban's hand, and the first truck exploded. A geyser of flame sprouted into the air a dozen yards away, hurling American soldiers from their feet. Another cooked off, this one closer, spilling soldiers into the dirt. Even I fell to my knees from the shockwaves, and I saw our Gowlers suffer the same. Only Caliban kept his feet, braced for the impacts. He extended his hand, and from 30 yards away, his glaive hummed and launched itself toward him from the saddle. The weapon slapped into his hand, keened with almost predatory glee, and Caliban the Black flourished at once in a savage flash of silver. Rodney reached for his comm unit, but Caliban blurred forward and cleaved him in half, splitting the man from shoulder to pelvis in a single stroke. Scarlet sprayed across Caliban's armor, painting him in gore, and Rodney's pieces flopped to the ground, his eyes wide in horror. Rifles barked from the few raiders still upright, and Caliban danced to the side, dodging the volley of hot lead. He lunged forward, striking like a serpent, and blood gouted from severed necks and lopped limbs as Caliban fell upon the reeling raiders. I had left my weapon on my worm steed, but I still bore the standard with the flag of truce. I swept the staff about, smashing rifle barrels aside and sending shots wide. Almost no one paid attention to me. Roars sounded from the desert, and I turned to see Ulktar, war chief of the Gadoran tribe, slam into a soldier and lift him bodily from his feet. The Black Orc hurled the screaming raider a full 20 yards to slam into a truck, which exploded as another of Caliban's rigged crates detonated. Then the rest of the tribe crashed into the reeling humans, and the true butchery started. 6 hours later, the representatives of High Command arrived, signaled by 8th Legion communications, with a new signature appended. Caliban received them from his throne, and my heightened senses could hear their heartbeats quicken in their chests as they beheld him. Savarian Caliban sat upon Lord Commander Varian's high-backed drake seat, taken from the slaughtered beast's back. He held his glaive in one hand and the skull of Rodney Callahan in the other. Dog tags, taken from the slit throats of the fallen, jangled in his fist. The throne itself was lifted from the ground by the skulls of Rodney's raiders, ripped from their necks by the now fanatically loyal Gadoran tribe of orcs, and stripped of their flesh till only the white bone remained. The representatives, noble-born elves all, stepped uncertainly toward him. "What is this barbarity, Captain?" one of them snapped, but his heart was not in it. His gaze was that of an elf who understood what he saw, and yet did not think such a thing could be true. This was a tableau of much older days, when the elder elves tore dominion from the hands of cruel gods. Caliban's cold eyes fixed upon him. "Take this message to the lords of high command," he said. "In the wake of Varian Echthalad's death, I, Savarian Caliban, houseless of the 8th, hold his seat." He stood, and the gesture emphasized the throne at his back. Drenched in human blood, standing upon a pile of grinning skulls, Caliban the Black stared down at them with unblinking eyes. "The human resistance here has been crushed. The 10th way has been opened. I shall hunt the remnant of their raiders in the mountains, and their skulls shall join their fellows here." "This," an elf sputtered, "this is most irregular. To assume command as a mere captain." His voice trailed off as the Caliban fixed him with that gaze. No life stirred in those eyes. "The Lord Commander took months to fail completely. I arrived this morning and broke them by sunset." He looked up, his eyes unfocusing. "Tell your masters that Savarian Caliban the Black is the demon of the 8th Legion. By atrocity defined, by mercy unswayed, and by fools unhindered." He raised a bloody hand, holding Rodney Callahan's skull to the sight of the heavens. "Victory is ours. He said it tonelessly, but as the orcs of the Ghidoran tribe roared, the messengers of high command paled. Only when we returned to Briarthrone and I stood in the silence of my quarters did I allow myself, at last, to laugh. It started as a breath, which became a chuckle, and finally a full throated roar of laughter, barely muffled by the thick tapestries on the walls. The demon of the eighth, he said. By the murdered gods, the irony was nearly enough to peel the skin of this disguise I wore. I took a deep breath through the nose. I found the abattoir stench pleasant, actually much like the incense true elves might burn in their quarters. Old blood and rot were my aromas of choice, and the half-devoured corpse of the original Albareth provided both in pleasing amounts. My laugh was low and guttural, powerful enough to damage the fragile vocal cords of this frail body. I would repair the damage later. With a wave of my hand, I opened a scrying and beheld the elf Caliban in his quarters, silently washing the blood from his armor. I could sense his focus, his will clad in steel that his campaign of conquest had only just begun. How remarkable that he turned the symbol of his father's failure into the avatar of his meteoric rise to greatness.
Your father did not fail, little demon,
I breathed.
He did indeed summon one of the old ones to serve House Ravenna. Now I am bound to the success of his heir.
Caliban glanced up, his gaze sharp as though he heard me. I held my breath, even one such as I held rapt by the lethality, the hunger in that unblinking stare. So odd to see a look one of my brethren might sport in the eyes of a mortal. Disquieted, I closed the scrying, lest somehow he see me. I am called Albareth, though that is not my name. I now serve as equerry of House Ravenna, banner bearer of the 8th Legion, and warrior of the Way. My smile split my cheeks at the thought of the look in Caliban's eyes. The end of the world lay in those eyes, though he knew not how. When I finished using him to summon brothers banished in ages past, I would devour him as I would the rest of his damned kind. Until then, the laws of my summoning held tight around me like chains, and I am compelled to suffer undignified servitude beneath Caliban's boot. A chuckle shook my chest at the parallels between us. An elf pretending to be a demon, and a demon wearing an elf. How novel.
Glory to the 8th,
I snarled, and took another bite of rotting elf. That is The Ruin of Caliban. Again, that is available in the Fae Wars anthology, More Tales from the Occupation. If you guys liked it, pick up a copy. Check out the other great stories there. Lots of great authors contributed to that one. This story will help prepare you for Devil Rising. Caliban will return. I sound like freaking Disney and the Avengers right now. Caliban will return in Avengers Doomsday. Now, Caliban will come back in the upcoming novel Fae Wars Devil Rising. Gonna have a lot of fun with it. We have a Marine Corps necromancer meeting with this elf warlord, and the two of them are gonna have a good time. I can't wait for you guys to read it. Hopefully, it'll be out later this year, provided that I finish it. But this was the prequel to that story. So, if you guys enjoyed it, I'm gonna take off and I'm gonna go work on the novel. See you guys later.